Alright, so a little while ago, I made a video called Why Ken is Strong, this video right here, which was basically a big breakdown of all the reasons I think Ken is a strong character. And because of this video, I think a lot of people wrongly assumed I'm a Ken hater. And that's actually not true. Outside of Jinrai, I don't even mind fighting Ken that much. I think Jinrai is silly, but I don't feel that strongly about Ken overall. For me, there is one character that genuinely drives me insane. If you've watched my stream before, you'll know where this is going. This character, I believe, is the single strongest character in the game right now, and his name is Akuma. A-K-U-M-E-R. I've had a lot of requests to make a Why Akuma is Strong video since this one came out, so that's what we're doing today. And in order for this video not to break down into a big whiny rant, I actually wrote a ton of notes over here on my left. So hopefully this comes across as a technical, facts-based breakdown of why I think Akuma is such an incredibly strong character, and particularly how his tools compare to other similar tools that other characters have, because I think that's the important thing to compare against, you know? As always, I'd appreciate if you guys could hit that subscribe button, and let's get into the video. So as with the Ken video, we're going to start going through Akuma's normals, and then his specials, and then his supers. I'm not going to cover every single move. I'm just going to mainly focus on the ones that stand out to me for reasons that I will explain. So let's start with Akuma's normals, and we're going to immediately start with his standing light kick. This thing right here. It's a 5-frame light. It's got great range. This thing's amazing for poking, amazing for punishing things like spaced, unsafe moves. Alright, so for comparison, Ken's stand light kick is also a god button. I listed it as one of his strongest buttons. But I will be honest, Ken's stand light kick does have one major drawback, which is that Ken cannot combo from stand light kick with a drive rush cancel, right? If you do stand light kick drive rush, it will never lead to anything. You can't go into even a jab from this thing. Not without a counter hit, at least. Like, on regular hit, he can't combo anything with a drive rush cancel here. Now, let's also jump to the other major Shoto, Ryu, on the other hand. So, unlike Ken, Ryu can combo off stand light kick drive rush. So, he is able to do this and get a combo off it where Ken can't. But, unlike Ken, the reason that Ryu's stand light kick is not quite as good is because Ryu cannot actually link into his stand light kick off any of his jabs. So this is not a combo. He cannot do jab into stand light kick. So even though his stand light kick does give him a combo on drive rush, he can't actually link into it. So you just have to do it raw, which you can't really hit confirm. So I think that's quite good balance. You know, you've got Ryu's stand light kick, which does lead to a combo on drive rush, but he can't link into it. And Ken's stand light kick, which doesn't lead to combos on drive rush. But unlike Ryu, Ken can link into his stand light kick from jabs. So he can do something like this. Now, why have I just talked about those two characters? You see where this is going? Both of those moves have downsides. Both Ryu's and Ken's similar stand light kicks. So you're probably thinking, what's the downside of Akuma's stand light kick? And the answer is, he doesn't have one, because Akuma gets to do both of these things for some reason. So, Akuma can do the Ken thing. He can link into stand light kick off his jabs. No problem. But also, as well as being able to do that, he also has the Ryu thing. He can do stand light kick drive rush into a combo. So he's got the best of both worlds here. He can do this and a combo, and then continue like that. Basically, Akuma has the best features of both Ryu and Ken's stand light kick. This button is very privileged. So that's stand light kick. We're going to move on to the next normals. We're going to do stand medium punch and crouch medium punch next. And I've put these two together rather than doing them separately because Akuma is part of the extremely privileged club of having not one, but two 6-frame mediums. A lot of characters don't even have one 6-frame medium. He has two of them. And not only that, stand medium punch is plus on block. So there are very few characters in this game that have two 6-frame mediums, and even less where one of them is plus. You know, the only other characters that I can think of that can do this are Rashid, Juri, and I think Chun-Li. So yes, stand medium punch, amazing pressure tool. Crouch medium punch, I think this might be the single most underrated Akuma normal. I don't see many people talking about this absolutely insane button. This thing is incredible at like this kind of range, as like a whiff punish, or just like a bullying normal, or a drive rush buffer. This thing has an unbelievably disjointed hitbox, considering like the animation. Let me show you the actual hitbox for this thing. It's ludicrous. Look at this hitbox. All of this around the fist has absolutely no hurtbox to go along with it. It has this giant chunk around his hand with no hurtbox whatsoever, which is really, really good. And not only that, as well as having an amazing hitbox, this move has 14 frames of recovery. Now, just to put that into context, 14 frames of recovery on this button is the same amount of recovery as Luke's crouch medium punch used to have in Season 1 when it was renowned for being the most spammable crouch medium punch in the game. Like, one of the biggest Luke nerfs was that they added 3 extra frames of recovery to his crouch medium punch. So Luke was nerfed for having 14 frames recovery on his crouch medium punch, but I guess Akuma can just have that anyway. Speaking of comparisons to Luke's is plus on block, so that does give it an edge over Akuma's. Akuma kind of splits the functionality between stand medium punch and crouch medium punch. But what's important to mention about Luke's crouch medium punch is that on hit, it's only plus 5, which means that Luke, on regular hit, can only link his crouch medium punch, and even in Season 1, he can only link his crouch medium punch into lights. Akuma, on the other hand, you guys see where this is going? Akuma's crouch medium punch is plus 6 on hit, which means that it links into itself on regular hit, and it also links into stand medium punch on regular hit. Yeah, Luke's also adds extra combo scaling as a combo starter. Akuma's doesn't as well. I hadn't even included that in my notes, but yeah. As well as linking into itself, on counter hit, this thing is plus 8, which will happen quite often. If you just poke with this thing in neutral, you will get counter hits with this thing quite a lot because of the startup and the hitbox. Wouldn't you know it, being plus 8 means it's plus enough to link into his crouching medium kick on counter hit. So you can do something like this. That's a combo. Counter hit, crouch medium punch to crouch medium kick. It might not seem like that much. This being a combo is insanely privileged because, again, looking at the other Shotos, can Ryu do this? Nope. Can Ken do this? Nope. Neither Ryu nor Ken can link their crouch medium punch into crouch medium kick on counter hit, which is an incredibly useful link to have, especially with Akuma for reasons that I'll get into later with his combo structure. But like, yeah, we'll get there. Anyway, sticking to normals for the time being, we're also going to talk quickly about stand heavy punch. This is the iconic Shoto stand fierce. This one's very similar to Ryu and Ken's. Ryu and Ken both have normals that are very like this one. Pretty much every version of this normal is amazing, whether it's Akuma, Ryu, or Ken. This is just a god button, regardless of which character you give it to. Like, the Shoto fierce in this game, in my opinion, this is maybe a hot take, this thing is such a valuable tool to have that I still believe the only thing stopping Terry from being a top 5 character is purely that he doesn't have one of these on stand heavy punch. His stand heavy punch is a completely different type of normal. If he had a Shoto stand fierce, he would be a top 5 character. This is all that separates it. This thing is so damn good. Speaking of heavy punch buttons, he also has this thing. This is forward heavy punch. Where do I even start with this one? So this thing has massive range. It's a forward advancing normal that's also completely safe on block. It also has a target combo that you can single hit confirm into, which is that. So if you just happen to land a hit with this thing, very easy to confirm. You have a huge window to confirm this. Also, for some reason, as well as having the target combo, if you do it in the corner, if you stop after the second hit of the target combo, you just get a juggle into, I think, medium DP. Yep, that's just a thing. I think you can do EX as well, which does good damage off a very easy confirm. Also, speaking of combos from this thing, if it happens to randomly counter hit your opponent for whatever reason, if you just throw it out from here, This thing is +6 on counter hit, which means, you know, pick your 6-frame medium of choice. You know, big-ass combo. On punish counter as well, it's an amazing combo starter because it's +8, which is enough to link into crouch medium kick. So, like, even if you hit this thing from super far away, especially as, like, a punish counter, you get crouch medium kick afterwards into a full combo. I forgot to mention a second ago, on block, as well as being -3, this thing does enormous pushback. Like, it leaves you so far away on block, and it puts Akuma straight back into his, like, optimal spacing for, like, a spacing trap. So even if your opponent tries to take their turn back after blocking this thing, a lot of the time, it's very dangerous because something like this might happen. You know, stuff like that. Like, Terry's crouch medium kick is, like, one of the longest crouch medium kicks in the game. And it's not guaranteed after this thing. So it's very scary trying to take advantage of... Even though Akuma is -3, taking your turn back here is really hard. So, yeah. Very low risk, very high reward button. Okay, up next, his overhead. This is forward medium punch. So Akuma, like quite a few other characters in this game, can meaty his overhead to make it plus enough to get a combo from. And that's not the unusual part. Something like that. Meaty overhead setups, I would say like at least half the cast can do this. Where Akuma becomes privileged, something that only a very small number of characters have, is that his meaty overhead, even if your opponent successfully blocks it, is +1. There are very, very few overheads in this game which become plus on the last active frame. The vast majority are somewhere between -2 and 0. Like 0 and -1 are quite common. +1 is very rare. So even if you block the overhead, it is still Akuma's turn. The last normal that I want to kind of spotlight here is a air command normal. It is this thing. Jumping down plus medium kick. I hate this button. I have a personal vendetta against this button because it's particularly nasty against Aki. But even separating it from Aki's difficulty dealing with this thing, this is the first of many obnoxious air options available to Akuma. So this thing works like a traditional dive kick, you know? It delays Akuma's air momentum for a bit, and that slight delay, like that, is usually enough that if you try and anti-air him with a normal rather than a special, like if your character has to use normals to anti-air, you don't have a DP, a lot of the time, your normal will run out of active frames because of that slight pause in the air, and you will get punish countered, and you will eat a huge amount of damage, you know? And that's not enough to make it super strong by itself. That would be useful if that was the only thing about it. But the reason that I absolutely despise this normal is because it's a dive kick, and that means that you'd probably assume that like a character like Cammy, or maybe Jamie, it becomes unsafe if you space it incorrectly, right? That's usually how dive kicks work in Street Fighter. If you hit it too high, you're punishable. If you hit them low, like in the toes, you might get plus frames. That's usually how dive kicks are designed in Street Fighter. This goddamn thing, even if you spectacularly misspace this thing and hit them as high up as physically possible in the top of Terry's hat, what do you think this is on block? The correct answer is -1. Not only is it safe, it's -1 on the top of the head. Sometimes it'll be -2, depending on micro spacing differences like that. This thing is completely safe at all heights and all spacings on block, with the only exception being if your character is a big body. The only time it's physically possible for Akuma to actually be punishable after this stupid-ass dive kick. Can you guys tell that, like, my inner hatred is starting to leak out? Against tall characters like Zangief, if you do instant dive kick as early as possible on the top of his head, it's -4. That's the only scenario this thing is ever unsafe. If you are not a big body character, if you just have a normal hitbox like most of the cast, this thing is never punishable on block, which I think is absolutely insane. Okay, so those are the main normals that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, he has other things, you know, crouch, medium kick, drive rush, always a strong option, but not especially unique. His crouch, medium kick is kind of average. But just before we move on to his specials, can I also talk quickly about Akuma's walk speed? Because that is not, it doesn't fit in the category of normal, special, or super, but I'm just going to slip this in here. Akuma's walk is lightning fast. And you guys might remember that they actually nerfed Akuma's back walk speed in the last balance patch. His back walk speed is actually slightly slower than it used to be. What you might not know about Akuma's back walk speed is that after the nerfs, it's still tied for the fastest back walk speed in the game with Chun-Li. Yes, that's right. His back walk speed is top 1 in the game post nerfs. Also, before someone hits me with the actually, yes, I know, technically speaking, Kimberly with the level 3 buff has a slightly faster back walk speed, but for 99% of the round, Akuma is tied with Chun-Li for the fastest back walk speed in the game. He doesn't have to unlock it like Kimberly does. One last thing I forgot to mention before we move on to specials is his throw loop as well. So Akuma has maybe the best throw loop in the game. Arguably the best throw loop in the game. So after a forward dash, Akuma is +9. You know, some characters get to be +2, maybe +3, or even +4 after a forward dash. Akuma is +9 after forward dash. Which means that he still has plenty of time to shimmy you after a forward dash. He can use the plus frames to get a BT stand medium punch, which can be potentially up to +4, I think. There you go, +4. He can even dash into an EX fireball. Like that. That's legit. And we'll talk about his EX fireball. Don't worry, we'll get there. But that's very good for a reason that I'll explain later. Also, speaking of his forward throw, I think his forward throw is one of, if not the only forward throw in the entire game that's plus enough that he can do a drive rush overhead afterwards, and it's uninterruptible. Most characters, if they do throw into drive rush overhead, they're doing it as a hard read, the opponent will down back. But even if your opponent wakes up mashing and you do drive rush overhead here, does not matter. In fact, you get an even better combo because of it. So that's also extremely privileged. So, moving on to his specials. How long is this video going to be? I feel like this might be a long video based on how long it took to get through just a few normals. Let's start with the most iconic special in Street Fighter, the Hadouken. Again, I don't know where to even start with this thing. So, Akuma has the best non-charge fireball in the entire game, and I don't think it's even close. In terms of frames, this thing is better than Ryu's. Like, Ryu is usually known for having the better fireball of the Shotos. He's kind of fireball man. This has 1 less frame than Ryu's fireball. It recovers 1 frame faster. As well as that, and this isn't something that I see people talk about that much, but it drives me crazy. Akuma's fireball has absolutely no telegraphing on the startup animation. So I want to talk about this real quick. When Akuma throws a fireball, he doesn't really have any key posing. It just kind of materializes in his hands and then it's just out. It's like a jump scare almost. There's like not a big build up to it. He just goes from an idle stance and then the fireball's just there. A big part of reacting to fireballs is identifying the animation during the startup. So look what happens. I'm going to use the in-game pause feature for this because this is useful. So if I do something like this, pause that. So this is Ryu's fireball. And when Ryu is in fireball startup, he takes on a very distinctive pose. He puts his arms like way out behind him. And like it completely contorts Ryu's whole body. It's very clear from the stance that he's taking that he's in the startup of fireball. And the other thing is, as well as his body positioning, you can also see this gigantic flash of blue appear in his hands almost instantly. So even though you might not be registering this in real time, your muscle memory will go into like a reactive fireball mode once you start to see this animation. This is a key part of Street Fighter's visual language, is that characters like Ryu have very well-designed key poses to make their fireball identifiable during startup. So that's Ryu's. He's got a nice big blue flash and a very clear pose to the startup of his fireball. Akuma, on the other hand, he does not take on much of a different pose from his idle stance. He moves his hands a bit, but the overall shape of his body does not change at all. He doesn't crouch down. He doesn't bring his arms behind him. His overall positioning is basically the same. And you'll also notice that during Akuma's startup, the particle effects for his fireball are very dark and very similar to his overall color scheme. So we've got like dark purple against like grays and browns. And this might not seem like much, but in your brain, this is much harder to identify in the startup animation. So I just want to bring this up because no one ever talks about this, but Akuma's fireball is so much harder to identify. So anyway, getting back to the frame data, Akuma's light fireball, as well as being faster overall, that also means it's significantly safer than the other Shotos on block. So Akuma's fireball, point blank, is only -4. Ryu's is -5, and Ken's is -7. And you might think, well, okay, -4 is the safest, but it's still punishable. And my response to that is lol, Lamal, because the pushback on this thing is also so severe that basically no character in the game can punish Akuma doing fireball in a string, even point blank. No punish. Completely safe on block. So even just by default, Akuma's fireball is the best, both in terms of like frames and in terms of reactability. It's just the best fireball. But as well as that, he also has the ability to charge this thing. So even though we were just talking about the regular fireball, I hadn't even mentioned that he can charge this thing into a 2-hit or a 3-hit version, depending on how long you charge it for. And this obviously makes it extremely good in Fireball Wars because he can overwhelm like an incoming projectile with a 2-hit projectile. Kind of Uno reverse the Fireball War. And also, it's amazing because its use as an Oki tool. If you guys don't know, Akuma's 2-hit Fireball is +2 on block, and it does almost no pushback, which means that anytime you end like a corner combo and you have a decent amount of frame advantage, you can do it as a meaty, and it leaves you in the perfect range where you can throw for a tick throw, or you can shimmy with his amazing back walk speed. As well as that just being a good Oki situation, the reason this is particularly good is because it being a projectile means that it's also completely immune to level 1s. You cannot level 1 this thing if that's your only reversal. And if you don't have access to an EXDP, pretty much the only way you can actually punish this thing at all is that you have to perfect parry it. But because this is a 2-hit projectile, not only do you have to perfect parry it, you have to actually hit the double perfect parry, which I guess I'll try and do just for demonstration's sake. Yeah, so if you double perfect parry, you can punish Akuma for this, but it's very difficult to do. So all of that was just his regular fireball, all of that yapping. Let's talk about Akuma's EX fireball, because his EX fireball is also insane. Again, we're going to do the comparison once more, just because I want to emphasize that everything this guy has is better than the equivalents on like every other character. So Ryu's EX fireball is -1 on block. Ken's EX fireball is -2 on block. Akuma's EX fireball, wait for the punchline, is +2 on block. But not only is it plus, it's also +2. Which is a very important distinction because +2 is enough for a tick throw. So point blank EX fireball into throw is a tick throw. So incredibly privileged EX fireball. Alright, moving on. Speaking of fireballs, air fireball. This thing right here. The Akuma Classic. This is the move that defined Akuma. This is the reason that he's top 1 unbeatable character in Super Turbo, the Air Fireball. Air Fireball has been consistently nerfed in a lot of the more recent Street Fighter games because it's such an overpowered approach. But for some reason in Street Fighter 6, it's recovered a lot of its former glory. So in Street Fighter 4 and in Street Fighter 5, the thing about his air fireball was that it was extremely good, but it also caused him to continue his air trajectory if you did it early. So for example, in 4 and 5, if I did instant air fireball as low as possible, Akuma would keep going through the air, and it would mean that it was usually extremely unsafe. In this game, the moment that you do the air fireball, it instantly kills his upward momentum, and he just starts coming straight down behind it. Like, do you see how, like, Akuma just stops and starts going back down again once you do the air fireball? This is completely different than how it worked in 4 and 5. This is like the old school privileged version of this move. The main reason that I bring this up is that it makes it extremely hard to find an angle to punish for most characters with an anti-air. Like, anti-airs will go through this fireball. If you have a DP, it can go through the fireball here, but the angle is extremely difficult to do. And also, and again, remember how a minute ago I mentioned that this thing is literally always safe for some reason, no matter how much you miss space, his stupid-ass dive kick? Well, good news, it's not the only one of his dumb air options that's also impossible to miss space. So, if I do the worst timed air fireball of all time, worst timing, worst spacing, instant air fireball to hit a point-blank opponent in the top of the head like this, it's -2. In Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter 5, doing an air fireball this bad would be like -10 on block. You had to actually like space your air fireballs in those games. In this game, it's literally impossible to miss space his air fireball. You just can't do it. It's always safe. Oh, by the way, EX version, just before we move on, the EX version of this completely stalls Akuma's air momentum for like a whole second. So this is the ultimate move for like fuck your anti-air. Even if you have a DP, the fact that he just completely freezes in midair will almost always cause your DP to whiff if he does the EX version, which is incredibly stupid. But also, the EX version is the only version of this move which he can perform out of a neutral jump. And especially in the corner, if Akuma's at about like this distance, which is where he likes to like jail you in the corner, just doing neutral jump air EX fireball is like the most autopilot way to lock you down. There is almost no consistent way to anti-air this thing. Let's move on to his DP. And I don't have that much to say about Akuma's DP. Obviously, it's a very good like traditional Shoto anti-air. Not that much different from the other Shotos. But one thing I do want to mention about his DP is the EX version. His EX DP does 1,700 damage. For comparison, I sound like a broken record, Ryu's EX DP does 1,600 damage. Ken's EX DP does 1,600 damage. So once again, his DP does more damage than all the other Shotos, and as well as that, this is the nerfed version of Akuma's EX DP. This thing lost 200 damage in the December patch. It actually used to be 1,900 on EX DP, and they toned it down to 1,700. So this is, I can't believe this is the second time I'm going to say this, but they nerfed his EX DP from being the most damaging EX DP all the way down to the most damaging EX DP. That is such an Akuma thing. It happened to his walk speed. It also happened to his DP. They nerf him from being better than everyone else to still better than everyone else. Also, it's anti-DI because it's 3 hits. Okay. Next up, we have Adamant Flame. This thing. Quarter circle back punch. This is Akuma's brand new special in this game. This did not exist in previous Street Fighter games. And in this game, it's mostly for combos. It's mostly combo fodder. Mid-screen, it doesn't lead to much other than Oki. Like, you get good Oki off this thing, but that's basically it. In the corner, you can tack on a bunch of stuff, including Heavy Tatsu, which does an ungodly amount of damage as a combo starter. Like, just something like this. Doing 3k, 1 normal into 2 specials is kind of wild. It's also, the heavy version is also safe on block, so it doesn't really matter if you mess up your hit confirm, like this, because you're just -2. So, safe combo starter, high reward in the corner. This is one of those moves that's really, really good for killing your forward momentum out of a drive rush. So this, that little pause during the startup is amazing for like stopping your opponent from intercepting your drive rush. Not only is it safe on block, but if this works, if you get a punish counter with this thing, because you baited your opponent's drive rush punish, like this, it is +12 on punish counter, which is absolutely obscene. This is his like optimal combo starter, and it's safe on block. So you just do like that into like this. It's really crazy how good that is as a combo starter, considering how low risk it is. If this hits on punish counter, yeah, just put the controller down. So if it was just that, this move would be definitely good. But I think where this move gets really insane is the EX version. This thing right here is ludicrously powerful. Just like the heavy punch version, this thing is also completely safe on block, which is absolutely... I do not understand this at all. This is his, like, perfect combo starter, max damage combo routing. Every combo should go via this thing. Why is it safe on block? Can you imagine if you just never had to confirm your best combo starter? So again, if you just buffer like this, safe on block, very low risk, and if your opponent doesn't block, if they get hit by this, look how much damage this does for no additional drive cost. Look at this nonsense. Ready? Why is this character doing almost 4,000 damage, 40% of your health, for 1 EX off a safe buffer? That is a 1 EX combo, 2 bars of drive. Like, that's up there with, like, Marissa for, like, cost-benefit of combo output. That is insane. What's extra dumb about this as a combo option is, as well as the obscene damage, EX moves do not put you in drive recovery lockout. And that's really important because watch Akuma's drive gauge during this combo. Do you notice that even though this is a 2-bar combo, by the time it's finished, you get 1 bar back? So actually, it's more like a 1-bar combo rather than a 2-bar combo. And if you then combine that with like the Oki that you get afterwards, so let's say that I go for like a throw afterwards, because I get Oki here, like that, and we're basically back to full drive. It's insane how rewarding this is, both in terms of damage and also in terms of drive refund. It's ludicrous. Also, he can do this off everything. Another thing I didn't mention about EX Flame is that quite a few characters' optimal combo starters only like work off like heavies and stuff. Like, you would think this might be a move that you can only start off like Stand Fierce, but that would be a mistake because you can do it off literally every single one of his mediums. So it works off Stand Medium Punch, it works off Crouch Medium Punch, and it also works off Crouch Medium Kick, which is, I think, even more insane. Why is this a combo? Crouch Medium Kick into safe max damage combo starter? Like, are we serious right now? None of the other Shotos have anything even comparable to that. I mentioned earlier that Crouch Medium Punch combos into Crouch Medium Kick on counter hit, and that's where this gets silly, because you just start doing stuff like this. You know, 3,800 damage off random 6-frame medium counter hit. So yeah, this thing, it leads to way too much damage, and it's completely safe on block. I don't know why it was designed this way. It honestly feels like an oversight. Alright, anyway, moving on. Demon Flip. I think in this game it's called Demon Raid. This thing right here. Okay, so before I talk about the absolute nightmare that is Akuma's Demon Flip in this game, I want to talk about... I'm going to take a quick diversion, and I want to talk about Street Fighter 4 Yun. Just for a minute, real quick. Just, I'll tie this back together in a second. Okay, so this is Kazunoko's Yun. Probably the best Yun player of all time in this game. But I genuinely believe this character right here, Street Fighter 4 Yun, is the reason that Capcom pretty much completely erased the ability to dive kick out of neutral jumps in subsequent Street Fighter games. I think this guy, you know how like you almost no dive kick characters can do it out of neutral jump anymore? I think it's because of this character right here, specifically Kazunoko's Yun.
South by Southwest, it took a wake up ultra from Kazunoko to take the victory, but it worked.
So might not have looked it might not look like much, but this was Yun's like optimal game plan in this game. He would sit at like this distance right here and then just do this. He would just neutral jump from about half screen, and this was absolutely terrifying because at this distance, if you go for a DP predicting the dive kick, it will just whiff and you will die. And if he does decide to go for the jump scare dive kick, he can reach you from here. Yun can do heavy. Is it heavy? Or is it light? I forget which way round it was. One version of his dive kick will cover this angle. So Yun's optimal game plan a lot of the time was just neutral jumping at half screen. And basically, he put you in a mix-up by doing this. Like, Daigo is effectively in a mix-up every single time he does this neutral jump. And then you can see, because this mind game exists, once you establish the neutral jump, suddenly you can just jump for free. Why am I talking about this right now in this Akuma video? And it's because of this. Welcome back, Yun neutral jump. Akuma's light demon flip covers so little horizontal range that this thing practically functions like a neutral jump. It moves him forward a tiny bit, but effectively this is almost like a neutral jump. And the follow-ups are very similar to a neutral jump because you can just do no follow-up like this, like an empty neutral jump. But if you think your opponent is going to do something, if you think your opponent is going to go for like a fireball or like a button on the ground, look how insanely quickly this transitions into a dive kick from this distance. Ready? Bam. That's crazy that he can take so little risk on the vertical part of this thing. Just doing like light demon flip from like here, and then just occasionally just jump scare you like wham. It's so fast, and the angle is so evil. This effectively, to me, is the same as Yun neutral jumping in Street Fighter 4. It's so damn good. A lot of Akuma players, their entire game plan will basically just be to sit at this distance, threatening the demon flip, and then sometimes they'll go for the jump scare dive kick, sometimes they'll go for the low, which is plus for some reason. Don't ask me why, it's +2. Sometimes they'll then go for like the really long demon flip and do like palm. All of these options are plus. Every single follow-up out of this move is plus for some reason. It has so many different ways of mixing up your anti-air timing and anti-air angle as well. Capcom likes to give any moves that change your air trajectory in unusual ways very large hurt boxes. I think to make it a little bit less frustrating to anti-air them. So, for example, this is what Jamie's hurt box looks like during his dive kick. Ready? It's the one on the left here. This is the buffed version, by the way. This is how it used to be, lol bottom text. This is his old hurt box on the right. This is his new buffed hurt box on the left. But you can see, during his dive kick, they don't really want Jamie to just completely bypass your anti-air entirely. So you'll notice that he has very large hurt boxes around his legs, significantly larger than the hitbox. And Kami's is very similar to this too. Dive kicks usually are designed like this in Street Fighter. So, with that being in mind, what do you guys think Akuma looks like when he is busy doing his demon flip? And the answer is... yeah. Just absolutely no hurt boxes on his feet at all. No hurt boxes on the front of his body. He like tucks his little body. It's like he's a crouch hurt box in midair. His hurt box during demon flip is so small for some reason that even if you try and anti-air this thing a lot of the time, your anti-air can just miss. Clip courtesy of Reichman. Look at this nonsense. Look at this. Jamie jab. Look at Jamie's jab here. Literally jabbing Akuma's taint. And no, that's crazy. So, yeah, as well as the fact that he has like 8 different follow-ups he can do out of Demon Flip, and he can vary the angle, even if you do try and anti-air him, sometimes the game just says, lol, no, like this right here. Also, just before we move on, I want to stress that every single one of Akuma's air options does have counterplay. So whether it's like jump down medium kick, air fireball, demon flip palm, demon flip dive kick, demon flip nothing, demon flip slide, every single one of these options does have counterplay. The mistake people make is they'll be like, bro, all you have to do is just DP with a very specific timing and you'll beat this move. But the reason that Akuma's air approach, I think, is overpowered is because the one answer that beats one thing will lose to everything else. So, for example, if you think he's going to do air fireball and you do the DP timing for that, if he does, like, this instead, it'll probably beat your DP. So, like, every single time Akuma jumps, you are kind of in an RPS mix-up, which is in Akuma's favor. So I don't want anyone to say, bro, you can always just DP through the air fireball. It's a mix-up. If you knew what Akuma was going to do every single time, then you could always anti-air him. But the problem is, every single time he leaves the ground, he can do about 7 different things. And at best, your anti-air is going to cover 1 or 2 of those things. And that's why his air approach is so obnoxious. The risk-reward is extremely skewed in Akuma's favor. Okay, so this is a long one. Let's finish up by talking about Akuma's supers, now that we've done his crazy specials. So, Akuma's level 1, this thing. Not much to say about his level 1, the base version, other than the fact that this is a projectile. And having a projectile level 1 is useful because it means that if you try to chip out an opponent that's in burnout, and you do his super, your opponent cannot respond with their own level 1, because level 1s lose to projectiles. So even if they do their level 1 second, Akuma will still win. So having a projectile level 1, it's not a big deal, but it's just a nice little upgrade over a regular level 1 most of the time. So that's his ground level 1. He also has a air level 1, which is this thing. And this can be cancelled into from jump medium punch, which gives Akuma some of the most damaging air-to-air combos in the entire game. Again, not optimal, but nearly 50%. I don't mind that, though. That's fine. I don't mind characters having big rewards for stopping people jumping. That one doesn't bother me. But let's move on to Akuma's level 2. And I think this is one of the best level 2s in the entire game. It's maybe outclassed only by, like, the mix-up ones, like Rashid level 2 and JP level 2. But it's definitely one of the best level 2s in the entire game. So, after Akuma's level 2, the opponent gets wall slumped. And after this slump, you get to continue the combo, you know? Basically the same as this thing. And that doesn't sound that good, but the reason this is so crazy on Akuma is because, for whatever reason, Akuma pays absolutely 0 damage penalty for the privilege of just getting to keep comboing. It's fully invincible as well. There's like no downside here. This thing does, on hit by itself, this does 2,800 damage, you see? 2,800 damage. That is exactly the same damage as something like Manon's level 2. Manon's level 2, also 2,800 damage, but you just get a free combo afterwards. Like, what is the downside here? You get a full damage level 2 with no damage reduction, and you also just get to keep going? I don't understand. It just gets more combo. 20% extra combo for your combo? Like, that's crazy. Oh, also, as well as getting to combo after his level 2, I should also mention that Akuma's level 2 is one of a tiny number of moves in this game which, on hit, returns the juggle state back to the beginning. So what that means is no matter how long the combo was before the level 2, you basically get to start the juggle again from scratch after the level 2. So something like this. Normally, after like 2 EX fireballs here, I'm just going to save a state, you'd be very limited in how you can follow up in this situation, but Akuma's level 2 just resets you back to the start, so you can just do whatever you want afterwards, like, you know. It's like the combo beforehand didn't even happen. There's just no downside to this thing. It's just only upsides. The last thing I want to point out about this super, which I don't see too many people mention, is that unlike a lot of other supers in this game that let you combo afterwards, things like Chun-Li level 2, Akuma is not subject to any restrictions on meter build for the follow-up combo. So even though this thing costs 2 bars to do, you can actually get refunded at least half a bar of super for the follow-up combo, which I think is insane. So if you look at Akuma's super gauge, watch this. There we go. So that's... Even though I spent level 2 on that combo, I currently have like 1.6 bars of super because I got a huge chunk refunded for my free combo extension, which is insane. You know, Ed's meter build was killed after his level 2. Chun-Li's was killed after her level 2. DJ's was killed after level 2. Akuma still gets to build an absolute ton of super after his level 2. Anyway, finally, his level 3. So as with all things, Akuma somehow still gets to be privileged even when it comes to level 3s. He is the only character in this entire game with 2 different level 3s, not counting the difference between like level 3 and CA that everyone has. So on top of that, Akuma also has Raging Demon. Once your health gets into the yellow bar, you unlock his second super, which is his classic demon. Iconic demon. Very cool super, but also unbelievably powerful in this game. So, as you guys probably already know by now, this thing is an unjumpable, unreactable command grab that does almost 50% of your health. He can also take advantage of this game's system mechanics to tick into demon, like tick throw into demon, extremely easily from basically any drive rush cancel on block. You're just got. Anytime you block a low forward drive rush from Akuma, and he's in yellow health range, you are guessing for game. Because if you block, you will get demoned. But if you suspect he's gonna go for the demon and you hold up, and he decides not to demon, then you still lose most of your health. So basically what this comes down to is that if you are below 50% health against Akuma, anytime you block normal into drive rush, you are in a 50-50 guessing game to instantly lose the round, basically. It's a grappler mind game from a Shoto. Also, it's worth mentioning that Lily and Manon in this game are literally fucking dedicated grapplers, and neither of their command grab level 3s are unjumpable after the flash. Like, you can still jump after the animation on both of those, even though they're grapplers, but this thing, after the flash, is unjumpable, which is a trait that is only shared with this asshole and Zangief. They're the only 2 characters that have unjumpable super grabs. Also, not to mention that having a normal level 3 as well as a Raging Demon, the fact that he has both means that Akuma can use his level 3, the regular one, for chip outs. Akuma can chip you out with his level 3, the regular version, which is a privilege not afforded to Lily or Manon, who have jumpable command grabs that cannot be used to chip people out. So he gets the best of both worlds, yet again. That's the consistent thing you'll see here, is that Akuma can do things that other characters can do, but also he can do them better than their dedicated archetypes. Anyway, so, we've gone long here. There we go. There's Akuma. His normals are amazing. His specials are amazing. His supers are amazing. His neutral is amazing, his rushdown is amazing, his zoning is amazing, his damage output is amazing. I think he's the best character in the game, but on second thoughts, he has 9,000 health, so unfortunately, the 3,000 word essay that I just dropped about all of his tools is instantly invalidated, and he's actually a fine and honest mid-tier character. Alright, we're done here. See you next time, everybody.